Hi, I'm Nathan Holt, and this is Grand Prix Las Vegas, the largest trading card game tournament ever held. And according to my watch, it's a hair past a freckle. But what that means is, it's magic time.
Hey, welcome to Magic Time. This is just part one of my coverage of Grand Prix Las Vegas. Throughout the next couple of episodes, I'll be talking to a lot of Magic pros, Magic personalities, Magic artists, cosplayers, vendors, judges, and players like you. So sit back and relax and enjoy the show.
Hey everybody, I'm Cedric Phillips, online content coordinator for StarCityGames.com, founder of the Stream Team, and on occasion I like to play some Magic.
Hi, I'm Jackie Lee. I'm a writer for TCG Player, and I started playing on the pro circuit in early last year.
My name's Nathan Holt, and I'm the host of a web series on dailymtg.com. It's called Walking the Plains, and it's a documentary series with some sketch comedy that chronicles the life of Magic tournaments, players, their lives, and the excitement that unfolds.
Hello everyone, my name's Rich Hagan. I am sort of, I guess, the voice of the Pro Tour. I spend my time watching Magic, talking about Magic, writing about Magic, and sharing lots of good times with all you guys and girls at home.
Hi, my name's Sheldon Menery. I'm one of the Pro Tour coverage people. I'm doing broadcasting here at Grand Prix Las Vegas, the greatest Magic tournament in the history of Magic tournaments.
I came from Boston. That's where I live, and I went to Houston on the way here, and then I stayed with a friend in California for a week. So I've been Boston to Texas to California to Vegas.
I traveled from Columbus, Ohio. I was actually doing a show for Star City Games Live, doing commentary there with Ricky Hayashi, and then on Monday I flew here to Vegas, got to hang out with some friends and play this tournament.
So I came all the way from England, flew Manchester to Chicago to Las Vegas. We won a little sealed event, doing the whole sky draft thing, if you like, on the way over, which was kind of fun. So yeah, about sort of 21 hours door to door.
Favorite decks, Kithkin, base white, little splash of red from 2009 when I top 8 the Pro Tour. The Mythic, the Sovereigns of Alarum deck that I played in Nationals in 2010 or 2011. My favorite creature is Figure of Destiny, and my favorite spell is Bonfire of the Damned. So.
Yeah, my favorite card is Splinter Twin, because it's like a cute story with my husband. He said, oh, finally, it's a way that I can express how I feel about you when that card was printed. So we collected all these Splinter Twins, and then they got really valuable, and it was great. And my favorite deck is probably the red-green deck that I played in Standard during Dark Ascension in that period of time. I did really well with it over a really long period of time, and I just knew the deck in and out. There were so many really cool interactions with like Undying and Phyrexian Metamorph, and then the Metamorph, when it comes back, it could copy like a sword or some other equipment, so that was probably the most fun deck I've ever played.
Jeez, number of GPs? Wow. Boy. Stab in the Dark, like 50 or 75? I don't actually know. It's pretty hard to calculate at this point. I've been playing competitive Magic since I was 18. I'm 27 now, so some number there. I took a year off. I mean, I'd like to believe it's around the 50 number instead of 75, but we'll go in between there.
I actually don't know how many GPs I've been to. It's probably about 30 or 40. And this one was really different, actually. Just the fact that it eclipsed the next largest GP by such a significant percentage. Somebody was asking me on day one when I was X2, is X2 or X3 better at this point? Because at X3, you can't make day 2, but you also don't have 6 rounds ahead of you that you need to win out in order to make the top 8. So it's actually ridiculous what you had to do to achieve pro points in this tournament.
My best advice is to make sure that you do like your research on the tournament, so you know like when the tournament starts, entry fee, where the tournament is, hotels that are close by and stuff like that. So you're not blindsided by anything. There are web pages for that on the Wizards website, so it's not very difficult. And then, I mean, come here to have fun. Don't come here with the expectation to like have a great money finish and stuff like that. These tournaments are fun first and foremost, and then if you happen to do well, that's fantastic. But if not, I mean, have fun with your friends, travel, and enjoy yourself where you're at.
Really, the only thing that you should be setting out to do is to have fun. Because if you don't have fun, you're not going to play well, and also, like, that's the whole point. I think it's something that even seasoned Grand Prix goers could do to remember, because, you know, going to events so many in a row, and if you're not doing well, it can be easy to forget why you play the game to begin with. And then the other thing that I would recommend is to just read the cards. Don't feel like your opponent is in a superior position to you just because they may have more tournament experience, because, you know, you play the same game and the cards do the same thing for both of you. So if you just read them, you can do pretty well. And then the last thing is set goals for yourself and then just try to achieve those goals. And it could just be very simple things like remembering your triggers if that's something that you have a problem with. Just any kind of personal goal, and I think that will help you get the most out of the experience.
Yeah, I've only played in a couple Grand Prix myself, and you know, I had a blast. I didn't win very much. You know, the first time you compete sort of at a premier level event, you feel that it's a certain qualitative step above whatever skill level you've competed at beforehand. So just be ready for that. Be ready to have fun even if you lose. Come with friends, you know. Bring a cube, bring your commander decks. You know, go out to eat, see some of the city. Turn it into a trip, you know, a real road trip. I think having fun, you know, aside from your performance in the event is very important. If you're going to have your first Grand Prix or any Grand Prix, if you're a veteran who's done a million Grand Prix, you know, yeah, you're bummed out if you don't do well, but you know, find other things to work on or to have fun with. I think that's good advice. And if you're traveling a lot, you know, and you're grinding and on the circuit, I mean, I don't know what that life is like outside of coverage. You know, I travel and grind sort of for coverage, but it's a very different thing than being a player. But what I've observed in documenting the lives of players in the series, and with grinders especially, is you know, whatever goal you're pursuing, and I think any grinder who's traveling a lot is pursuing some sort of large goal. You know, make sure that you're having fun and that your happiness and feelings of self-worth and self-esteem are not tied entirely to whether or not you make this goal. Living that kind of binary existence, I think, can be really rough. So make sure that the process, it's about the journey, not the destination. Have fun, play Magic, make sure that, you know, Magic is a great part of your life and that it brings you closer to people. I think that's more important than individual achievements are. You know, is Magic connecting you to a community of people that enriches your life?
The deck I played yesterday was green, and I was playing black and white for Rebels and splashing an Una. And then sometimes I would splash blue for Take Possession. But I had some very good rares in my deck. Una, Queen of the Fae, and a darker Valkyrie. Those are both really strong. Even so, I felt that I was disadvantaged against just another deck in general because there's just such powerful equipment that you can open in this format between the swords and, I mean, Vidalcan Shackles is another one. And I just didn't really have anything on that level, and I played against Una a bunch of times too, so I just felt like parity, you know?
Yeah, so the personal one was killing someone on turn 5. I made a Bone Splitter, then I made a Knockdown Stinger, then I quit the Bone Splitter and hit him for 3, then I made another Bone Splitter and hit him for 5, made another bone splitter hit for 7, and I sacrificed one of the bone splitters to a shrapnel blast, went thanks for playing, which I imagine was not his highlight of the weekend, but it was mine.
My seal pool I thought was really, really good, so I'm a little bit disappointed that I'm knocked out of the tournament, but just things didn't really break my way. I had a Maloku, the Clouded Mirror, and a Skeletal Vampire, along with a lot of removal spells and some pretty good mana, but I just ended up losing to some other bomb rares, which happens a lot in this format. I didn't open anything sweet like Dark Confidant or Foiled Tarmogoyf, so nothing awesome to saw. I opened a Progenitus, which is worth a couple bucks, but my deck, as far as like quality for the tournament, was actually pretty good, so I'm a little disappointed that I'm knocked out.
I mean, it's awesome that we're making more cards available to more people. You know, some of these cards haven't been printed since Fallen Empires. So it's great to see them all reprinted, and it's interesting to see nothing but savagely good cards printed in one set. You know, that's Modern Masters is 230 odd really awesome cards. Whereas, you know, in normal sets you kind of have mediocre cards, good cards, and great cards. Here, they're all good and great. So it's interesting to see all these synergies that weren't necessarily designed to go together, playing together. I think it makes, again, for the sort of intermediate and advanced level Magic player, it makes very, very compelling view.
I mean, I like it. It's not really great for limited play, like especially Sealed Deck, because they didn't design it with Sealed Deck in mind. They designed it more of like, yes, you can kind of draft it as like a mini cube, and you know they want to get Modern into the format, so you know, they want to make Modern more of a format, so they want to get the cards out there and saturated so that people can actually play. So if that was their goal, it was certainly a success. And they'll probably do something like this again. I wouldn't be surprised to see a Modern Masters 2 or something like that, just to make sure that people can have all the cards to actually be able to play the format. I mean, this one's super interesting and much different because there's so many people, gigantic convention center. It's more of like a festival than a Magic tournament, kind of like Grand Prix Charlotte was. But it's really cool. I mean, everyone's having fun. Everyone gets to meet everybody and play some Magic. So this is what I've always wanted for the game, so I'm all for it.
It's a really crazy set, very unprecedented waters, uncharted waters rather, that Wizards is venturing into here. I really am into the desire to reprint hard-to-find cards for players who are trying to get into certain constructed formats, Modern in this case. But I wouldn't be opposed to seeing this happen again for other formats or for Modern again. I think it's a very good idea, and hey, if they're gonna print new cards, they might as well make it into a really cool limited format that gets people excited. I think there's a lot of frustration out there over the price of the set, that stores are jacking up the price, and that's a problem because that's kind of feel bad, but I'm not sure what Wizards could have done to really prevent that this time around. Maybe something, I just can't think of it, but I'm sure that they'll keep that in mind the next time they try to do something like that. I do anticipate that they would, but I don't know, I'm only speculating.
I really love Modern Masters for Draft. I think they did a great job. And I'm sure it was not too difficult for them either, because all they had to do is go back in time and pick out the best archetypes in all of these draft formats throughout history and then jam them together. But that's why it's so much fun. I'm a little sad that it's so difficult to get into a real live tournament with Modern Masters because there's just such a limited supply. But I also understand that I don't know. It's tough because it makes it special. It allows the cards to hold their value more, which you can draft 24/7 on Magic Online right now, and all of the cards they've just plummeted in value. So I'm sure it's really difficult for them to achieve a balance. But I mean the set itself, I really enjoy it.
This has been a fantastic event. 4,500 people, that's just crazy. Utterly wonderful. I adore Modern Masters. Yes, I do. I love Modern Masters. My box, mine, precious. I love it. It's an incredibly complex format. It is not for everyone. You could do all sorts of terrible things to yourself. Unsuspend it. Casting Rift Sweeper when you've got Ephemeron suspended. You can do abysmal things to yourself with Hammerheim Deadeye. But if you get the format, it utterly rewards you. Day 1 was astonishing. Learned a ton on day 2. It's a tremendous set to draft. Wonderful to see. I very much hope, I have no idea, I very much hope there'll be more of this on the way, because almost incidental to the enjoyment of the set is at the end of it you come out with your Chalice of the Void, your Tarmogoyfs, just so many cards that are part of modern magic. I think they've done a great job of calling it correctly. There are, Dark Confident, obviously. So many cards that not everyone has access to. And just through that gradual thing, which most of us do, which is we draft a bit, oh look, we drafted RTR, we got a Shotman, great. Oh look, Gatecrash came out, and now we've got another couple of cards for our new deck. Playing in that way and gradually building a collection that way, some of the best and most fun way of doing Magic. And Modern Masters kind of aims to do that. I think it's done a really good job. I'm looking forward to going home and going, okay, Modern Masters is done. What did I end up with? And I'm going to see that my collection has grown with all these fantastic cards. And honestly, it will probably get me into playing Modern, which mostly I haven't really had the opportunity to do so far. So on that score, brilliant. And as for the event, well, words do fail me, which doesn't happen very often, does it, viewers? No, it does not. Your Uncle Rich will tell you, to be here was an honor and a privilege. I didn't get to cover it, I got to play in it. I got to play on day 2 because I beat lots of people. Even the people who went 0-3, who I spoke to, said they would not have missed it for the world and that it was a wonderful weekend. So just terrific, and let's hope we have Modern Masters 2 sometime.
Actually not yet. Like, there aren't any cards that were, they can't print any of the fan cards, like Umezawa Shite and Jason the Mind Sculptor, so, like, for this one, I think they did a pretty good job. Like, they could have balanced, limited a little bit more, like, had more Giants for the Thundercloud Shaman decks and stuff like that. But I think, like, overall, they did, like, a pretty good job considering this was their first effort.
I was really expecting Thoughtseize to be printed in Modern Masters. Actually, at the last Modern tournament I went to, I specifically did not buy Thoughtseizes because I thought I could pick them up after Modern Masters. But I guess we have like a mysterious future ahead of us in that regard. Apart from that, I can't really think of any cards I would have wanted in the set.
Boy, I'm sure a lot of people are going to be happy to see Bonfire of the Damned go, so that's going to hurt a little bit. I think the cards that are going to be better are cards like Ralzeric, which doesn't really have a home right now. That card's like too powerful for it not to be good. But kind of like when Jason the Mind Sculptor was released, it took a while for that card to kind of get its footing, and then once it got its footing, it obviously dominated and got banned. I don't think Ralzeric is like banned level. I don't think it's a banned level card, but I think it's a super powerful card that just doesn't have a home because Blue-Red's not good enough. Innistrad cards, I mean, I think the card that I'm actually going to be happiest to see go is even an Innistrad card. It's actually an M13 card. It's Thragtusk. I think everyone's like pretty sick of it. There's a chance they reprint an M14. It would be nice if they didn't, because like the card's actually just too good for its mana cost, and it really warped the format. So I think overall, I think everyone would probably be happy to see Thragtusk leave.
Oh boy, this is really tough because I haven't been playing Standard very much. I think Falconwrath Aristocrat is a very format-defining Innistrad block card that's gonna, when it leaves, then the Aristocrats is gonna be totally different. I think that the whole format is going to be thrown up in upheaval because right now the Standard format is really weird in that there's just a bunch of good cards. So when Innistrad block rotates out, there's just gonna be like an influx of new stuff, and all that stuff will be gone. So I think that Theros is actually going to have a bigger effect on Standard than it normally would.
I'm not really a fan personally. I'm kind of like a person who likes the traditional thing, so as a result, like, slivers are kind of cool because they all work together instead of like the one helping everybody else out, because that's basically a tribal theme. So I understand what they're going for, because they want to make it tribal and not help make it so that the slivers are symmetrical. But I think what made slivers cool is that they are symmetrical because they're different from everything else. Now they don't really stand apart like they used to. The artwork is like, it's kind of whatever. Like, I know a lot of people are opinionated on it. I'm not really myself. They don't really look like slivers. They kind of look like stuff out of a movie, which is kind of weird. But like artwork wise, like, that's kind of up to them what they want to do. But like design wise, I'm not really a big fan of the direction they took slivers, and I think a lot of other people aren't either. But it's something we'll get used to.
Play-wise, I really liked how slivers worked before, because it kind of made your brain melt once you were playing those guys, and like, oh, but my opponent has one. Oh, well, if I play mine, then my guys get better. Oh, but then their guys get better, you know? So I think that it makes a lot of sense that they reduced it to just affecting your own half of the board. I think it's probably easier for newer players to pick up, especially relevant for a set like a core set. So I think that that's fine. I don't really have a huge problem with it, but I did like how the old slivers interacted. And as for the art, I'm super disappointed because the old slivers were so cool. I used to draw those in the margins of my notebook and stuff, you know? They were just like so iconic and cute. Just like this beaked, like it has one claw and a tail. Like those guys are so weird. And then the new guys just look like aliens or like generic monsters. I just don't like it because they look very homogenous. And the reason I liked slivers is because they were so unique, you know?
I'm just kind of looking for like some really, really good legends. I think it's going to be really cool. I think the flavor of the set's probably going to be really cool too. There'll probably be like some gods and some awesome planeswalkers and some very, very powerful legends. That probably cost a lot of mana that once you are actually able to get them in play, they're actually going to be like really awesome or insane. They'll probably have some sort of clause so that you can't show and tell them into play or like reanimate them so they're actually fair. But they're probably going to be just really awesome cards. There's also a pretty good chance that they bring Grandeur back so that you can play multiple legends and actually have it be an upside instead of a downside. I wouldn't be surprised to see something kind of strange like, you know, this awesome god type card that you can only have one of in your deck. Something cool like that. So I think they've got a lot of design space available, and I'm actually very interested to see where they're going to go with it.
I really want to see them do Titans. Pumped about Titans. Because those guys are creepy in Greek mythology, and I always loved that. Yeah, I don't know. I like the darker aspects of Greek mythology, and if they could somehow bring that into a set, I think that would be really cool. So as for the legends, I think, I don't know, I was always a little bit disappointed by the legend theme in Kamigawa because I felt like it was kind of, you didn't really see it very much in the limited environment. There were a couple of rares that kind of hinted at it, but it was just very uncommon to have interactions occurring with legendary at the rare, at the common and uncommon level, so just the majority of limited. So I think that if they took that to common and uncommon, it would be much more interesting.
I don't think there needs to be a top 16. I think really that, like, I'm not entirely sure that 15 rounds is enough. Where they want to do 9 rounds on day 1, 6 rounds on day 2. Like, in theory, this is a very good idea, but I don't think it actually works in practice. We're certainly going to find out in this tournament how things go. I think that the whole entire Grand Prix system just needs an overall revamp, which is a very difficult job, but because Magic is growing so much, and you have a 4,500 person tournament like we do here, you have no choice but to actually change the way that things are done. Again, you can't do things like they were in the past. You have to grow with the game, and I don't think they've done that yet on the Grand Prix level.
I think we already do a great job of star building. I think the fact that if you think of a game like, let's say golf, play the game at home with me. How many golfers can you name? I'll give you Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, and then Rory, European guy. Now try and name me 20 more. You probably can't. If you're a big baseball fan, you can name me a dozen top-tier pitchers and maybe a few world-class hitters. I don't think we need necessarily 100, 150 big names in Magic. Now, that said, I think we cater very well to those elite events. You look at the World Championship itself, that is 16 of the finest players with a 2-day showcase all to themselves, followed up by the culmination of Worlds Week, a semi-final and a final, the top 4. It's going to be amazing. And, you could argue that David Ochoa against an Owen Turton Wow, a Louis Scott Vargas against a Shuhei Nakamura, that could be like some of the worst pairings you can imagine for a top 4 or something, which is crazy, right? So that event is going to be just absurd. And I think that's something that we do to cater to that. Now, Grand Prix are not meant to be star building. They are meant to be celebrations of Magic that we all enjoy together. And right now, there is a top 8 going on. Dustin Ochoa, runner-up from the last Pro Tour, is in there. And then there are 7 people who are not household Magic names. But 1 or 2 of them may go on to become that, because this is where that kind of thing starts. And as you gradually see the story develop, if you pay attention to coverage and you start looking at the website, you will find these names cropping up. Yes, they may not make the top 8, but okay, they're still in contention in round 13, round 14. And just logistically, the GPs, what are we, 7 o'clock in the evening, trying to do a draft, semi-final drafts, and then final drafts? Never happening. We're so tight as it is. But in terms of, do we deliver big names as much as possible? Honestly, at Pro Tours, every round is packed with 8 big names in the feature match area for 16 straight rounds. And I think that's a good balance.
So we were just talking about this last night, and because of the numbers, I really feel like it should be top 16, because the tournaments have more than doubled in size, and it's still the same 8, you know? But it just poses a lot of problems for limited events, because you really need 8 people to draft. I know in World of Warcraft, they do cut to a top 16, and the way they solve the problem is by just drafting 2 pods of 8, and then the winners play, but that just introduces different and like pretty bad problems, because you don't guarantee that the power level of both drafts is the same, so it's kind of awkward. I think that cutting to a top 16 and having the first round just be sealed again is pretty reasonable. So ultimately, I'm not sure what the best way to solve that problem is. And while I do think that the top 16 should be recognized for their achievements, I also don't know how to play to a single winner in that instance. But I do think that there should be some tier of tournaments between Grand Prix and Pro Tours that require a qualification, but not as difficult of a qualification as the Pro Tour, because I think right now Grand Prix are growing to such a size that they're trying to service too many different groups of players. So I think that they need to start segregating out different player demographics into different events.
Well, I mean, I think you're adding another round of the tournament, and you always have to be conscious of tournament logistics. And it'd be great if all rounds were untimed and every Magic game came to an organic conclusion. But that's just simply, it's not doable without inventing some sort of time bubble technology. We have to get events done on time. Adding that extra round, I don't think it probably doesn't do too much as far as I'm concerned in getting a different picture for the top 8 than there would have been. I mean, in a large field, you just have to play excellent Magic the entire time. The slivers of skill are significant between the top and the middle, but when everybody's at the top, it's really, really difficult.
Magic faces a really tough challenge when compared to video games. In terms of its ability to be a spectator sport. Video games are unfolding like a movie in front of your eye, whereas looking at cards, from an overhead camera on a table, oftentimes, you can't really read the cards. The interactions are all occurring in our imaginations, so the comparison that, video games is like football and Magic is like baseball, a lot of people think baseball is a boring sport, but to people who know baseball, it's very, interesting and very subtle and nuanced. So Magic has to get enough viewers that become intimately acquainted with the game such that they can understand watching the game played by other people through a camera lens. So that's one thing that I think is going to naturally continue as more and more people become familiar with the game. The other thing is that Magic tournaments have these long breaks between rounds. There's a 50-minute round, and then a lot of time goes by before the next, turn 1 happens in the next round. And so we're doing, I think, a great job at Wizards and also Star City and other streaming, entities are doing a great job of creating content for the in-between time. and that's part of what we're doing in tandem with the live broadcast. So I think that there are a lot of challenges with making Magic more of a spectator sport, but we're tackling them. You don't climb Mount Everest in a day. It's a step-by-step process, and I think we're getting there.
Well, I think Duels of the Planeswalkers is one thing that has done a great job to introduce generic video game type people to Magic, because the interface is just way smoother, it's way cleaner, and it looks like something you would understand if you play other video games. As I understand it, the next client of Magic Online is supposed to function somewhat similarly to that, but it's tough because Magic is such a technical game when it comes down to it, and there's not a lot of action like there is in one of these MOBA games like League of Legends. I think that one thing that's very important is just to have streamers who are very interested and very excited in what they're doing, and to just be kind of like friendly and discussing the tournament as they're playing it, because I think that it's a particular skill to be able to talk and to play at the same time in a game that's as complex as Magic. And so I know that different streams get different amounts of viewers depending on how capable the players are of being entertaining as well as good. So
I mean, the thing they need to do is they need to make it more player-based instead of card-based. Right now, they're focusing solely on the cards that people are playing and trying to make the cards in the Nexus story, where you actually should be making the people who are playing the story. So as a result, people become more connected with actual people instead of cards and inanimate things. So you want to make the story about Luis Scott Vargas or Ben Stark or these absolutely fantastic players in the same vein that League of Legends does about Team Dignitas and the players on the team, Team Solo Mid, even in professional sports. It's not about the Miami Heat. It's about LeBron James. It's about Dwayne Wade. It's about Kevin Durant. So they make it about these people who you grow accustomed to instead of basketball. So I think they need to do that.
So I think there's an interesting thing there. I have to say, first of all, that I can't talk specific numbers, but it is worth saying that the numbers that are often thrown around in discussion about this are woefully low compared to the actual number of people who are watching it live, tuning in, watching for X hours at a time, downloading in the week that follows an event. There is many multiples of the figures that are mostly spread around when discussed about this. Nonetheless, of course it is true that you get these fantastic events, your League of Legends, your Riot Games kind of things, which are incredible showbiz events. They are very, very different things. I don't think people would readily compare the Super Bowl with GP Las Vegas. I don't think people would readily equate New Year's Eve in Times Square with GP Gothenburg. But people are very willing to compare this vast computer game industry behemoth which is played by millions and millions, simultaneously and every day and night, streaming and so on, with a game that we have just hit our largest ever event of 4,500 people. So Magic has a long way to go and to grow. It's going to be a great ride as we go along. Obviously the simple answer is you make it jazzier, you make it quicker, you make time clocks, you make each round last 10 minutes, you play one game, 10-minute rounds. There are all sorts of ways to say, how can we make people with a 10-minute attention span who need something happening every 5 seconds pay attention to us for 5 seconds? But I'm not sure that's what Magic is, because when you watch Tom Martell, or a Craig Wesco, or a Luis Scott Vargas look at a board state that does not move, and the answer is there, and they are trying to work it out, and you're trying to work it out at home, that isn't about the speed of your mouse or your mouth, that is about thought, and thought takes time. And so I think there's a fundamental disconnect between those two things. I think they're both wonderful. I love watching streams of, bang, bang, bang all over the place with Riot and League of Legends and that kind of thing, or StarCraft. I love watching Sean plot Day 9, terrific. But I'm not sure that do I attack with my Tarmogoyf or do I risk the crush underfoot? It's quite the same thing. And I think people who think it is may be missing the point slightly.
Well, I think there are going to be fewer casual Magic viewers because the player base of those games is just significantly larger. I mean, I think of the enfranchisement percentage for Magic is a lot higher. It's there are more people that play the game that consistently that go watch these things, and then you've got kind of a lot of casual other online game players that are going to tune in and pick up tips and whatnot. I think the constant action that you see, like in StarCraft, makes a pretty compelling spectator sport, where I think it's difficult for beginners to really get a lot out of the experience of watching Magic online. They've got to play a lot of it first and then watch a lot of it, where I think with the other games you can just watch a lot of it, and it's much easier.
Well, I didn't really feel weird about it because most of my friends were male, and that was just how it always was because I was a nerd, so I guess, I don't know, that's just my lot in life. But even back then, there would always be like weird comments and stuff, and I think that people just don't understand how often you get it. And back then, we were kids too, and the other kids, they could be really cruel. And like, when I was younger and people would jeer at me in a tournament because, oh, I'm playing a girl or whatever, and then actually beat me, that was really painful. Like, that was an awful experience, and I don't want anybody to have to go through that. That sucks, But now is a great time to be playing Magic as a woman because there's more women playing than there ever have been, and that means that it's not weird anymore, like it's getting normal, so people are not going to make these weird comments. Actually, it's funny because I usually don't get any comments to that extent, but this weekend in Vegas, maybe because there were so many players, I don't know, it happened twice. And the first time, it was my first round that I was playing, round 3. And my opponent was like, that's funny, I was just telling my friends how I've never lost to a girl before. And they have, but I haven't. I just always dodge that bullet. And I was just like, oh, what a funny thing to tell your friends. You must be the life of the party. Oh boy, I've not heard that before in my 20 years of gaming. That is the first. And he was like, and the thing is, people like that, they just don't know. Because this is probably the first time he's thought about it for a long time. He doesn't know that this happens like every event you go to if you're a woman. And you kind of just want to play Magic after a while. You don't want to have the same silly chit-chat for like the 50th time, And then the other thing that happened was in my last round, a guy walked by and said, oh, I noticed that whenever I play against a girl, I just expect that I'm gonna eat her. But then I realized that I probably shouldn't have that bias. And I was like, well, another problem is talking about it out loud that way to a bunch of random strangers, because wow, does that sound bad? And he was like, oh, sorry. And then 3 other people around me corroborated that he was being a jerk. And then someone actually told the head judge because she was uncomfortable. So that's the kind of thing, like you just don't know what kind of effect your words are gonna have. And I mean, that's so weird. Would you ever say like, so I just noticed that whenever I play against a black guy, I just assume I'm gonna win. Like, what? And then his argument like, oh, but I said that I shouldn't do that. Like, that makes it better, like it doesn't. It's just super awkward. Yeah, I would just say don't be nervous because everything in life is a skill, The more you do it, the better you get at it. And tournament experience is just another one of those things. So I know it can be kind of stressful sometimes if your particular area that you play in, they're not used to having a lot of women play. because then this kind of stuff does happen more frequently. But I also know about other areas in which there are more women playing, and they don't get these comments ever because nobody would ever think of it because that's just normal to them, you know? So if it's difficult, I would just recommend finding friends at the tournaments that you can spend time with, and like if something weird happens to you, you can vent to them and not have to worry about it, because I think having a support network is very important. In other areas, there are also, like in Seattle, and now there are chapters opening in other places. There's the Lady Planeswalker Society, and it's not technically women only, but it's for women, and, you know, if men want to play, then that's fine, but the whole point of it is to provide a safe environment for women to kind of get into the tournament scene and to feel like they're in a safe space to learn. And I think that can be helpful depending on your goals.
Thanks for watching part 1 of my coverage of Grand Prix Las Vegas. Make sure you tune in for part 2 when I continue talking to Nathan Holt, Rich Hagan, and Sheldon Menery, as well as some cosplayers I met at the event. In part 3, I'll be talking to some of the artists that were there signing autographs and doing altars. And in part 4, I'll be talking to some of the vendors, including the people behind EG Mats and InkedMats.com, as well as giving my final thoughts on the event.